Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to From the Depths of Darkness, an evening of horror stories told by members of Gamma Xi Phi. My name is Marc Abbott, and I want to welcome everybody out tonight. It is wonderful to have all of you here. I know you could be, as they say, anywhere else in the world, but you're here with us tonight, and I do appreciate it. Tonight, we are going to hear from three storytellers, their works of horror. So without further ado, we'll bring the first storyteller to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, Brother Kirk Johnson.
So this is a long, cool woman. On Main Street, workmen and respectable people move this way and that all over downtown, making their way to jobs I'll never have. Not that I'm too lazy or too dumb, I just don't have it in me. I'd done my time as a sharecropper both in and out of prison, so I developed a condition that didn't endear me much to the bosses. Authority had a way of pulling on my short hairs. I went straight to the barber, the best place for a black man to get all fresh and clean and some info on the goings on in town. And it helped that I knows the man with the goods. Clean Clemens was an artist with a razor. He was a tough guy at a tender age, but as soon as he turned 18, the Lord shined his light on him and he got himself a job at a local barbershop. I'm more inclined to believe it was the smiling nature at a Hanson myself. And then that's how his second life took to the skies. He cuts every head in town, both white and black, and from the mayor and his constables to the moonshiners and hustlers. Even the godly men went to him for a cut and shine. And with all that, the information flowed in spades. When I entered the salon, it was already hollering and hawing with the grown-ass gossiping menfolk. Buddy, a regular, gave me a look, squinting like he wasn't sure it was me or not. I'd just seen him yesterday. I had to take that into account that maybe he saw something different in me. He was a hoodoo man and could see the Hanson ghost, or so they say. I ain't never seen one, but I don't hold it against him. Hey, buddy, I called. Young blood, you back for a touch and go? Most definitely. Then I'll take in the day before it leaves me behind. You going to Easy's tonight, young blood? Asked Dogman Tyler, his gold tooth shining like a yellow star. As old as he is, it's a wonder he remembers me. Some say he's so old he knows half the county, and then some. Everyone except old Dirty Nails. Before I can answer, Buddy pipes in. With all them badmen there, leave that boy alone. Ain't that the truth? Fatso Call and Monty's supposed to be there tonight. Bucky Turner too. I had all them shiners and leggers coming in. Well, don't that beat all? Now 2 seconds in and I get enough to give the DA and a free pass. You think Clayton Graves is gonna be there? I asked. And the whole place goes quiet. All them old men look at each other while the younger customers just shrug off as if the name was too little consequence to really pay attention to. I feel my collar go hot and fan my neck. I hear he brings some of the special hooch straight from the devil's tit, I hear. Laughter. Young blood, come calling for the grand shit, huh? Dogman Tyler laughs. I stayed for a couple of hours after Clean gives me the wash and shave, just shooting the time and reminiscing on before being an adult in prison. Clean stopped me just outside his shop. Be careful, boy. There's a bad moon out tonight and that Clayton Graves ain't no one to be messing with. I know what you're gonna do, and I got no truck in it, but watch yourself. Easy's got some strangers going on about lately. Easy's ruckus house was out in the backwoods, just outside the county line. Easy Buck, an old Injun in love with pig feet and jazz, turned it into a speakeasy just after Prohibition became the law of the land. And is known for catering to the best and worst kind of clientele. Even the local sheriff knows it, but keeps his mouth shut. Music and hooch flowed through there every Friday night. And I mean some really good hooch, best in the county. I gave Clean a nod and a wink, but he just kept staring at me like a sad look in his eyes, like a hound dog with the droopy eyes and mouth just staring at you. Good luck, Clean said. No worries, I said. I got all the luck in the world. I called my man on high from a payphone at the post office. Luckily, it was devoid of any customers at the moment, so I had some privacy. I told him about the big load coming through over at Easy's in the Bayou tonight, and that some bad men were going to be there in full attendance. Of course, I lied that Clayton was going to be there. I wasn't sure, but the possibility was worth the trouble. A turnout that'll make your whole family FBI, tell him. I knew that would get his attention. What I didn't expect was his response. Nice going, sport. Now you hang tight over there at Easy's and wait till the cavalry come in. We'll need you to be on the spot intel. I tell you, that didn't sit too well with me. But what a fool believes is all he got in this world sometimes. I had high hopes that this was going to be my freedom song, Clemency. If not, some big points in freedom from the man. But I'll be damned if I didn't feel a little squeamishness in my gut, tell me to skin out of town and not look back. I went home and thank God them crows was gone. I took a nap, waking up in the early evening. After a cold bath, I put on my daddy's Sunday's best. Me and the old man shared the same size, if nothing else, and splashed a little cologne. Clean gave me some time back. Before I rode out, I made sure I took my razor with me. A nice pearl-handled polished white as a bleached bone and sharp enough to cut the wings off a fly. So feeling right for the night, I rode out to Easy's on my bike. I took myself through the backwoods of Brennan County off the main road. The lack of streetlights ain't bothered me none, since it was a good moon night tonight. It shined pale and bright, lending its light to my footsteps. I wasn't too far off before I heard the band making a ruckus down the creek. Soon, lights from the house in the woods glowed in the beacon of comfort in the darkness. I passed by an old hanging tree they used after the Civil War, and that some rednecks still use on us today when we get too familiar with a free man's ways. Every black man, woman, and child lost somebody on that damn tree. Some act like they don't forgot it's here. Others swear that it moves around from place to place within the county, so no one can be sure if that's the old tree or another. It makes no difference to me. It's just one of the most them people like to use on us, I guess. As I walked the dirt path, cicadas and crickets tried to compete with the blaring horns, stomping feet, and playful guitars that created a melody they would never be able to match. Sounds melting away, the words of the day made you want to dance and shimmy without a care in the world. Traffic in a small town worries meant nothing to the steamy night promised of the evening of pleasures and revelry shunned by everyday life. The noise from Easy was so loud, I almost thought I heard the whipped wings flapping, but it was too dark to see that far up. Just black on black. Not a star in the sky. Light from the shack showed me several long, wet worms squirmed their way across my path, and I wondered if that's the same as when a black cat does it. The door opened. A big, burly man sat on the right. I knew his mom. She was a teacher back when I was just a nugget in my parents' arms. She got killed during the ride to 21 while visiting family in Tulsa. Good old Beatrice Boulain was good to me. She was good to all the kids. And her son, Boo, he was a stand-up guy. If I remember correctly, he's a writer of some such. Can't recall what though, but he's pretty good with what I heard. Hey, Boo, how's it going? I extend my hands and exchange daps. Hey, man, Boo said, keeping your head down tonight. Get some high steppers coming in, a lot of cash and connects, so watch your ass. Shucks, homeboy, you know me. Yeah, I know you, he said, and gives me the side eye before he lets me through. The band ended their set so abruptly I couldn't help but think that it was for me. I see a few of the guys I ran moonshine with, and some others I knew I didn't want to know, white and black. We sat together, drinking and laughing, the lowest of society's low. Outlaws and criminals and ex-cons came together all in one place, a lawman's dream. I noticed some crates stacked over by the back door, reaching from floor to ceiling. They must have had a large load tonight. I wondered what the big deal was. This many big ones at one time called for a big time shindig. Squeamishness in my belly was telling me I was being set up, but the payoff was too good to let the jitters make the call. I took a seat by the back door with my back to the wall, a pad in pocket to make sure my razor was still with me. No one was getting jump on me. If anything went south, I'd be out that door in a jiffy, or worst case, I'd have to cut a fool. That's when I noticed Clean Dogman Tyler and Buddy up on stage playing old ragtime. Wonder how come they ain't mentioned they was gonna be here tonight. Or maybe I missed it. Buddy still got that look, but not at me, just staring into nowhere. The hooch moved. The hooch must have got a hold of him already. I ordered a whiskey straight and a beer before the lights went down and the spotlight broke through the black. A woman stood alone on his back on a makeshift stage, looking like perfection, surrounded by chaos settling in the room. She wore a tight black dress that glowed with all kinds of curves that make your heart dance. Her hair was a short cut with curls hugging the forehead and eyes that shine as black as sin. Her skin was so smooth and dark, decadent and sweet, like the candies of the ritzy folks on the hill indulged in. I was so taken by this long, cool woman in a black dress, I didn't even realize when my drinks arrived or the boisterous crowd go silent. I've never seen her or anyone like her around these parts. My dreams could never match the arousing brilliance I saw on stage that evening. She gave me a cool, long look before a sax melted in from the blackness behind her. I sat far in the corner. I sat so far in the corner I wasn't sure if she was looking at me or if she was looking at some of the mob of heavies in front of me. The band played in the dark, matching every note and beat with the sway of her hips, like juju men conjuring up a spell for the shades. Then she parted her lips, and a soft, husky serenade enchanted its way into this little shack in the woods. And as the music played, turning the smoke and haze into a creamy, black mass of sweet abandon, her voice mesmerized the body patrons with raptured stillness. I felt the air turn moist and heavy. It tasted strange in my mouth, and I shrank a little in my seat. I downed the whiskey and guzzled through the beer, hoping to clean my palate, but the taste was still there. The waitress came by with another whiskey and beer without me ordering. Her eyes were glazed over, vacant. I decided to nurse this one for fear of getting too drunk to remember what I was doing here. Even as I was falling in love with the voice on stage and the eyes that leered at me through the tobacco smog, I gargled the whiskey and the beer, only to be left with the taste of copper and ash. As the song rose to its crescendo, the taste grew stronger, and after, I spat out gobs into the corner next to me. I glanced towards the back door and noticed a tall black cat cut me a look, stalked past the door and out of sight. I ain't one for superstition, but a deep chill almost run me out my seat. Before I knew it, the singing stopped and the air turned back to the stale smell of expensive cigars, cheap cigarettes, and sweat. I tell you, it's a hell of a lot better than what blew in before. Howls and hooting, clapping, and stomping feet filled the room, replacing the sweet sound with the animal-like ruckus. I took another sip and chased it with a swig of beer, making another attempt to wash my mouth out. And before I knew it, she was sitting in front of me. I never heard her approach or saw her sit down. She just appeared right in front of me like a dream. Did you enjoy the song? She asked. Of course I did, I said, straightening myself in the seat. I wasn't sure. You looked a little pale around the gills, she said, and took a long, deep sip of my beer. The waitress brought another for me, and one for her, again without ordering it. Bring me some of my daddy's best, she ordered. Your pa's in the business? He makes the hooch, and I sing. You like? Nice tune, I said. Is that new? I ain't got no radio. It's an old tune, an old family song I rearranged for a more modern audience. I thought to myself, how old could it be? A good century or so, she winked. Or so my daddy said. He's big on keeping the tradition intact. The waitress came back with 2 tumblers and whatever the woman ordered. I took a good look at it. My daddy used to say, looking at a drink is like looking at the future. Until you tasted it, what do you really know? And then, of course, it's too late. I gulped it. Too late, I said. She smiled. I thought to myself, damn, she got some big canines. Then I asked her, is he still around? Oh, yes, he's most definitely still around. As she said this, the room got hot. I loosened my collar and fanned myself with my hat, turning around to see the back door was still open. The wind whistled through an open crack in the door. All that and still it felt like a hothouse. Would you like to meet him? She asked. Well, we just met, I said, pulling the collar a little wider. My hat hit the glass, spilling a little on the counter. It continued rolling itself, balancing on the bottom of the edge, and it didn't stop until she caught the handle and took a sip. She had finished her own without me even noticing. You don't look the type to be afraid of an old man. I ain't afraid, I lied. You live in town? No. You got a farm out here? No. He live out in the woods? I lied. Yes, kinda. But he travels a lot. He was going to come out here until he got some business to do. I leaned back in my chair trying to look cool. She was something else. I realized I was still looking at her into her eyes, and whatever she was saying sounded distant, muted, like somebody turned down the volume in the joint. Suddenly, Boo busted through the front door and laid out on the floor. He wasn't moving, and my blood ran cold. Three burly men in ill-fitting suits and hats that clashed with their ties came pointing shotguns. And right behind them came the sheriff, who looked none too happy. From behind me, the door squeaked open and I froze in my seat. Let's not make any sudden moves. Luckily, my hands were in plain sight, one holding my hat while the other stayed hooked to my collar. Not that it would stop a cop from shooting me in the back, but hope is all I got in a situation like this. I heard the hammer of a pistol click back just behind my ear. I felt someone smiling over my shoulder. You did good, boy, sneered Agent Bigelow. I looked over at the bandstand and I saw a dog man beaming at me. That damn tooth telling me he was about to do something stupid. He pulls a shotgun from behind the bass and starts letting loose. Clean ducks behind the piano while Buddy pops off from behind him with two revolvers, shooting like it's the 4th of July. The whole damn place got hairy real fast. Gangsters and G-men dropped and fall with blood sprinkling the air, and the place goes from smog to gun smoke in minutes. The man behind me starts blasting away, but my ears pop. But I hear something sweet, something more real to me than guns popping. We ain't supposed to stay lover boy. I can't say I thought much of what to do. I just acted. I pulled my razor and sliced Agent Bigelow. I sliced that G-man until blood spat on my tie, on my face. I swing, and I was gone. One swing and I was gone. I grabbed the hand and made it for the back door as police lights flashed from the front of Easy's. My bloody razor swiped away leaves and some small branches as the brush turned on, entanglement of vines and darkness, running out the back of the fields and into the woods, drinking us into its abyss. Shotguns and pistols echoed behind me. I just wanted to get as far away from the ruckus as possible. Sharp branches scraped across my face like claws from a cat, and the ground turned mud beneath my feet. I stopped and turned. I planned on hiding out here till the shooting stopped, but then she squeezed my hand. My hero, she whispered, and I took her further into the bushes. As we ran, my hand extended far behind holding hers, but she felt so close her lips brushed my ear. Why did you come to Easy's tonight? She asked. Shh, I'm tired and afraid. Here she is trying to have a conversation. I came for the hooch. She stopped. I stumbled back and we met face to face in the dark. I know we was because her eyes shine bright in the gloom, like a cat's or a dog's eyes glowing in the dark when the headlights reflect off their irises. But there was no light to reflect her eyes. They just shine. And I stood there in the dark, gawking because I was too afraid to scream, too taken by her to run. At that moment, I just wanted her. And then she took my hand, and I knew I wanted to be with her forever. She ran ahead and led me through the jungle. I wasn't sure where she was taking me, but I felt no need to protest. I'd follow her I'd follow her anywhere. We ran so far, I could no longer see the siren. I could no longer hear the sirens and hear the chaos of the raid. Neither did I hear the chirps or croaks of the night breed. Just my heavy breathing and heart pounding like a bass guitar slowly plucked to a rhythm of something unnatural. And I wanted it. I heard the sound of water running down a creek, but it began to fade the further we ran. She took me to a clearing far from Easy's, to any sign of the main road. It might have been another county for all I knew. The ground felt too soft and thick to run through, and I sank a little with each uneven step. Finally, we stopped. She turned to me, took my other hand, and sat me down on a patch of dry grass. A firefly buzzed out from the dark and did the strangest thing. It stopped, looked at me, then disappeared as if it was a wisp of cigar smoke or a dying ember. You are brave, she said. I laughed. We ran. What's so brave about that? Brave and quick. You could have stayed and waited for the police to take everyone, get your reward, but instead you ran away with me. How did you know about the deal with the police? I know so much more than you could believe, she said. The air around us turned nasty and humid, as if night air had blown pleasant all day decided to turn in the early for the night. Sweat rolled down my face, back and chest, like waves, as if I was taking a shower. Though it was dark, I thought I saw her teeth, glowing in the absence of any light. Teeth as sharp as a tomcat eating a mockingjay. I pulled out my zipper and flicked a small wheel for a flame to reassure my nerves. I placed it between us, and her teeth looked normal, but her eyes reflected the flame.
Thank you, Kurt Johnson. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What inspired you to get into speculative fiction? And let's get a little history behind the story you read tonight.
Kurt Johnson, I live in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, born in Trinidad. Born in Trinidad. I am 50 years old, and I got into speculative fiction because actually, particularly, I got into fantasy and cosmic horror. That's my wheelhouse, I should say. I got into fantasy because of the old Sword and Sandal movies back in the day, and the Ray Harryhausen movies with the heroes and so on and so forth. And I was probably the only kid in the neighborhood who didn't buy Marvel X-Men or Spider-Man. I was buying like Conan on Marvel and Arak and Son of Thunder and shit on DC. So that was my thing. Cosmic horror, Lovecraft, that asshole, but I got into this stuff. This stuff really spoke to me. I couldn't, even the Purple Prose, the way he set up an atmosphere and how when you read it, you just fall right into what the story's going, with the atmosphere and the story. And it took me to places that I never imagined before could be, or that I could even imagine myself. So that's how that happened. And the story was inspired by Long Cool Woman, the actual song. that was the inspiration. It was Long Cool Woman. And I thought that was like I just thought it was such a beautiful title. And I've met enough long, cool women in my life that this is for them. Even though, this is for them. If you read that, when you get to the ending and you read it, this is the stories you'll read it in Hell at Brooklyn T, written by myself and Steve Van Patten and Marc Abbott. And when you get to the end, you'll see what I mean.
So let us know, do you have anything new out? Anything the people should be looking for?
Oh, I do. Now, I had started a company, Farfield Press, and my first book debuted this year in March, I want to say, called The Almanacs and Other Tales of Heroes and Horrors. This is what is called Sword and Sorcery. So for those who might not be aware, Sword and Sorcery is anything like Conan the Barbarian. That's the shorthand of it, right? So, but it's Sword and Sorcery influenced by West African languages as opposed to places and people. It's mostly the language groups that I draw a lot of inspiration from. So there's adventure and excitement and fights, and all the stories, actually, there are 4 of them, but all the stories also deal with aspects of weird horror, with cosmic horror, as you put it. So so a lot of the stories, ancient world, swords. There are no damsels in distress. Many of the women are the mercenaries of mob bosses, crew bosses, and a lot of weird sorcery and adversaries to get to deal with.
And where can people pick up the Almanacs?
It's on Nook and Kindle for digital copies, but for paperback, It's on BookBaby. So check out bookbaby.com if you want the paperback, or look for us at your local cons. We will be at StokerCon next year, and hopefully maybe JordanCon as well, and maybe Multiverse next year, hopefully. But
Okay.
You can always contact me at Kirk Kirk Adrian J at Farfield Press, or on Facebook, Kirk Adrian Johnson, and Two Lands Farfield. That's where you also be able to find me. Send me an email, drop me a line. Get the book, tell me how you feel, whatever. So just holler at a brother.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Kirk Johnson, Long Cool Woman. And thank you very much for that selection tonight. Our next reader, LaToya Hankins. You're in for a treat, ladies and gentlemen. You're in for a treat.
I'm reading an excerpt of my short story called Ghosted. Trick or treat! A solemn-looking girl with a caramel apple-shaped face stood at Kathleen's porch steps. Kathleen appreciated the crow's wing-colored hair braided into two pigtails. The neat style reached the shoulders of a black pinafore dress with white buttons down the front and a white rounded collar. Kathleen recognized a little girl's costume from sneaking to watch reruns of the Addams Family when she was younger. The girl's choice of outfit surprised her. Most of the children she saw chose more recent characters to emulate. When Kathleen commented on her costume choice before placing the gelatin fish-shaped candy in her bag, the little girl shrugged and glanced over her shoulder. It was my aunt's idea. I was going to go as Lola Bunny, but when she said I should pick someone unexpected, I decided to go with Wednesday Addams. The girl's deadpan delivery did her inspiration justice. She promised I would be the only person out here with this costume, and she was right. Kathleen's entry was piqued. This unexpected twist to her standard Halloween experience caused a spark. It had been a while since something as small as a child's costume choice surprised her. I like the way your aunt thinks. Why don't you invite her to come up and get some candy as well? For a moment, the girl's eyes sparkled. She looked like she was considering smiling, then decided not to ruin her portrayal. Instead, she turned and gestured for her aunt to approach the porch. Kathleen hoped her reaction to seeing the guardian didn't betray her thoughts. Hello, gorgeous. A long, cold wig cascaded around a rich sepia face, blessed with lips a shade of ripening pomegranate. Carob-colored eyes rimmed with onyx liner met Kathleen's with a look of flirtatious interest. A raven-dyed dress clung to every curve like a sports car on a mountain road. The woman smiled, and a piece of Kathleen's anatomy she'd almost forgotten existed pulsated. My neighbor said she liked the costume idea, the trick-or-treater explained before Kathleen could offer an introduction. Thank you. I'm always encouraging Phoebe to chart her path. Life is too short to go with the crowd. Kathleen's pulse accelerated. She knew the temperature outside was dropping, but that voice sparked a creeping heat in places one doesn't mention in polite company. I have to say, I've been out here 2 hours, and this has been my favorite costume so far. I may be telling my age, but I loved watching the Addams Family when I was little. Granted, they were reruns, but I loved it just the same. Maybe it was the street lights coming on, but Kathleen could swear the woman's eyes glowed for an instant. A faint shimmer radiated from her face. How interesting. My introduction to Morticia and her family came from cartoons that ran in the New Yorker. My father subscribed because he said it allowed him to feel connected to his hometown. I remember his excitement when the cartoons started showing up in the magazine. I guess it was inevitable. I would become interested in them as well. Kathleen hoped the fading sunlight would downplay her slight squint of confusion. She remembered reading somewhere that Charles Addams cartoons started running in the New Yorker during the late 1930s. Phoebe's aunt couldn't remember her father reading them when they first came out. That would mean she is how old? That can't be right. The woman continued. It is such a treat to meet someone who appreciates my encouragement of my niece's costume choice. So many other homes we visited, it would seem, had no concept of inspiration. So thank you. I'm Lena, by the way. Kathleen extended her hand and introduced herself. Perhaps it was the weather, but Lena's hand seemed a bit chilly. A shiver prompted by that contact moved throughout her body. Still, Lena's less than room temperature didn't lessen Kathleen's enticement. If this is what her fingertips can invoke, what other magic lay in Lena's hands? You know, you don't need to walk with me if you'd rather stay here and talk about life experiences, Phoebe said. This time, a smile accompanied her words. I know how much you enjoy meeting people that can talk about stuff like that. I will see you back at the house. Are you certain? Lena faced her niece. I don't want to take any time away from you. You're always around and we have plenty of time to hang out. We both know you don't have too many chances to hang out like this. Tonight is special and you deserve to enjoy yourself. I'll be okay, I promise. Phoebe's serious demeanor returned. Miss Kathleen, thank you for the compliment and the candy. I'm going to visit 2 more houses and then head home. Now it was just the 2 of them. Kathleen searched for the next step. Then the solution came to her. I have a fire pit in my backyard that I don't mind firing up. We can sit and chat before it gets too cool. Lena's lips parted to reveal a slight gap-toothed smile. A fire pit? That sounds like an intriguing proposition. The 2 walked along the ash-covered cobblestones leading into Kathleen's backyard. The sounds of Lena's steps seemed to disappear into the night. Not that Kathleen expected her guest to sound like an elephant walking through the bush, but Lena's silent stride made her wonder for a minute if she was still behind her. Kathleen's doubt turned out to be unfounded when the 2 arrived in her backyard. Would you like something to drink? I have soda, water, cider, and some strong alternatives if you're interested. I can also whip up some quick eats if you would like. Yes to the drink, but no thank you for the snack. Phoebe's mother fixed a feast before we began trick-or-treating. I assumed she believed her child would be less likely to dive into her candy after a hearty meal. I don't think she knows her daughter so well, Lena chuckled. As if on cue, her phone rang. Kathleen took the signal as time to ignite the flames and go inside to fix their drinks. The 2 spent the next 2 hours talking about books, careers, and past loves. Everything about the evening seemed unreal, but some aspects struck Kathleen as a little odder than others. Some of Lena's references caught Kathleen off guard, but she forced her face not to reveal her thoughts. Her comments about living in Paris, having long conversations with Jimmy Baldwin at cafes, and enjoying Shay's brick top at night caused Kathleen's eyebrows to rise. Kathleen knew all the people she described hobnobbing with had been dead for decades. Yet Lena sat in her backyard looking not a day over the half-century mark. Kathleen was captivated, even though the math was not mathing, as her friend Cammie would say. The next morning found Kathleen back on her porch, nibbling on the leftover candy. Her guest bedroom still smelled faintly of cinnamon, and Kathleen considered letting the sheets stay on the bed a bit longer. Then she remembered Lena's abrupt dismissal of the 2 of them meeting up again. The thought gave her the motivation to strip the bed and toss the sheets in the washing machine. She even cracked the bedroom window open for good measure. Hi, Miss Kathleen. Phoebe looked completely different without the black pigtails and black dress. This little girl wore a purple sweatshirt with silver unicorns and khaki pants. Well, hello, Phoebe. What brings you this way? If you're looking for some leftover candy, you're welcome to it. You are my last trick-or-treater of the night, so I'll be glad to share with you. That would be great, but I'm not here for more candy. My aunt would like to invite you to our house for dinner. She's cooking her famous Moroccan chicken, and she remembered how much you said you enjoyed trying different meals. Kathleen considered the invitation. So last night, you said we couldn't have another bedroom and counter, but you can invite me to dinner? Kathleen shrugged her shoulders and went inside to grab her house keys. She didn't feel like cooking dinner anyway. You made it. I was worried you would say no. Lena stood in the foyer of her home, her face a canvas of relief. The slinky temptress from last night now wore a tunic the color of an oyster shell over a pair of loose nutmeg-colored pants. The curves were still there and the face was still flawless. I am still putting the final touches on the vegetables, and I anticipate the chicken being ready shortly. Phoebe, why don't you show Miss Kathleen around? Phoebe agreed and took Kathleen on a tour of the downstairs. The house was remarkably bigger inside than she imagined when she walked in, but the furnishings made it feel like a home. Kathleen appreciated the earth tones with splashes of plum decorations in the living room. A female voice called Phoebe to come upstairs and finish cleaning her room. Phoebe heaved a dramatic sigh and left Kathleen alone. Kathleen took the opportunity to look closely at the university degrees, confirming graduations from familiar colleges. One of the most ornate diplomas belonged to Lena. Kathleen's look of appreciation for Lena's achievement turned to astonishment when she processed the date written in the ornate script on the diploma. That can't be right. Kathleen's mouth dropped open and she sat down on the nearest couch. The realization that the woman who made her mouth water just by walking down her driveway was at least 90 years old was just too much. The witty beauty that engaged in such stimulating conversations last night was older than her grandmother. The skilled lover whose hands proved to have magic in them could be older than sliced bread. Damn. There's no other way to say it but flat out, I'm a ghost. Kathleen turned swiftly at Lena's voice. I died in this house 50 years ago, and except for one night out of the year, Halloween, I can't leave the grounds. Kathleen's eyes widened. What kind of Dia de Muertos stuff is this I'm hearing? So if you want to find out what happened, you have to purchase my short story, Ghosted, whenever you have the chance. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, I love that story. I'm telling you guys, you got to pick this one up and finish it out. So LaToya, tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to speculative fiction or most horror.
Well, I am a writer who primarily writes fiction. My genre is more contemporary fiction. I am a North Carolinian. I've lived here for all but 6 months of my 51 years. So I write characters who basically resemble me, women who live in the South. I write about sorority women. So what I write and what I enjoy watching is two different things. I love horror. I am a big vampire girl. You know, Halloween, I start my playlist on September 30th and I'll play until November 1st. I'm all into all the I Put a Spell on You. And, you know, no tea, no shade, but I want the original Holland J. Hawkins, you know, respect. You know, that's I Put a Spell on You. I want to hear all the moans in the background. So I was sort of challenged to say, if I like watching it, why don't I try to write about it? And the inspiration for Ghosted just came to sort of turn the title on its ear, because we all hear about people being ghosted, like somebody's like, poof, Kaiser Soze gone. Well, what happens if you meet someone and they're actually a ghost? Are you really truly being ghosted if that's the case, or is it something else? So it was fun writing. It was published last year, and I think it's one of my favorite short stories that I've written.
Definitely a page turner. So where can we find your work, and do you have anything out new that people might be interested in taking a look at?
Currently, I do not have anything new. I am actually working on 2 manuscripts that I'm hoping to have published first quarter of 2023. You can find my work on my website, latoyahankins.com. I have links to pages. You can always go with amazon.com. I will say that for some reason, Amazon decides they want to spell my name differently, depending on what I've published. So if you put my name in and you see something and you put my name in a different way, you see something else, the best thing is just go to my website, latoyahankins.com. I'm on Facebook, Latoya Hankins. I'm on Twitter, Hankins Latoya. I'm on the Instagram, Toya Hankins. So yeah, I'm there. Just as it's been once said, I believe it was Shaquille O'Neal to Chuck, I think it was Charles Barkley, Google me and you'll find me.
Our next reader, ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Van Patten.
Hi, everybody, brothers and sisters. What I decided I was going to do was get into an oldie but goodie, specifically from Brookwater's Curse, Volume 2. It's a little excerpt from one of my vampire novels. That's a short version. And what I'm actually doing here is introducing a new character, or a few new characters, actually. It's a bunch of people going on a camping trip. There's as is with a lot of my stories, there's some racial stuff happening in the sense that, in terms of the dynamics. So it's a white family. The son of the couple that's having the camping trip has a Black best friend, and he's also got an Asian girlfriend. So they're headed out to the woods, and things kind of go left. Anyway, here it is. The Tahoe and the Range Rover pulled into Townsend National Park at about 3 p.m. Gregory Bouja, a master at the art of the campsite setup, was like a general leading the troops to battle. Naturally, Gregory had a favorite spot in the park. What he loved the most about the 100-square-foot clearing was the way the trees bordered certain areas. This, in his eyes at least, made it easy to decide what should go where. Also, because the trees made it impossible to see from one section of the campground to the next, being on site was a lot like being in a roofless apartment. By 5 o'clock, the site was claimed. The tents were pitched and the campfire was lit. By 7:30, dinner, which had included steak and sauteed shrimp with grilled corn on the cob, had been ravenously devoured by all. Afterward, while everyone was sitting around with their full stomachs, tired bodies, and light hearts, it seemed to be the perfect time for Stephen to drop the big news. "Betsy and I are engaged," Stephen announced. Gregory and Natasha seemed thrilled at first. They even proposed a toast, even if all they had on hand was a bottle of Merlot. But after a half an hour of smiles and small talk, Gregory and Natasha abruptly excused themselves and left the makeshift cooking area, presumably headed to their tent. After an uncomfortable silence, Betsy announced that she was cold. She walked out of the kitchen area and sat down by the campfire, which was burning and crackling some 30 paces away. Stephen figured she was out of earshot, so he turned to Jeremiah. "I don't believe them. They're going to do this in front of her," he moaned. "Dude, relax. Maybe you folks are just so excited they decided to go make you a little brother or sister to celebrate," Jeremiah speculated with a chuckle. "Ugh," Stephen said. "Thanks for that horrible mental image. Look, why don't you go snuggle up with Betsy by the fire? I'll go in my tent and give you guys some privacy. Hopefully, she didn't read anything into what your parents did," Jeremiah said. "See, Jeremiah, that's why, as good looking as you are, you can't keep a girlfriend. Betsy is a woman. They read into how you cut your toenails." "Point taken," Jeremiah said with a shrug, "but do us all a favor, forget your folks, and try to have some fun." As Stephen walked toward the campfire to check on Betsy, Jeremiah began his short walk to the tents, which were only 50 paces from the cooking area. As a child, being in the woods unnerved him to the point where he never would have walked from one part of the dark campground to another by himself. As an adult, Jeremiah had conquered many of his old fears and was now so relaxed that the need for sleep was almost unbearable. In fact, if not for the big wedding announcement and the ensuing family drama, Jeremiah would have already excused himself and been in his tent, snoring away. As branches cracked under his 6'3" frame, 200-pound frame, Jeremiah made his way past a series of tiki torches Gregory had planted in the dirt path that led from the cooking area to the tents. His was the last tent in the grouping, so he had to make his way past Betsy and Stephen's green tent, then Natasha and Gregory's large blue tent to get to his own significantly smaller purple tent. Jeremiah noticed rustling in the blue tent and thought nothing of it, since Stephen's mom and dad were probably just getting themselves settled. He was grateful not to hear the words, "I can't believe he's going to marry some Chinese bitch," coming from the blue tent as he passed by. Once he reached his own tent, he unzipped it, kicked his boots off, and slid inside. At first, there was nothing but the peaceful sound of chirping crickets ushering him off to dreamland. In mere seconds, Jeremiah drifted into a vague area of half sleep. When he heard the first low growl, the ripping of nylon, and the sound of bones being rendered, he thought he was dreaming. It took a good 10 seconds for him to realize that he hadn't really fallen asleep yet, and thus should be concerned. Alarmed, he slapped his hands around inside his dimly lit surroundings until he found the hunting knife that had only hours ago been returned to him. Bracing himself to face a rampaging, man-eating bear, Jeremiah sprung from the tent, filled with the intention of saving the day. At least that was the plan before he laid eyes on the thing that was killing his best friend's parents. Except for the bloodstains, the creature was a mass of white fur. While it was clearly big enough to be a bear, it was too sleek and dog-like. As it held a bloodied and limp Natasha under one of its massive paws, most of the monster's weight seemed to be leaned onto Gregory, who lay helplessly trapped beside his critically injured wife. Remnants of the blue tent lay scattered all around them. As Jeremiah choked on a scream, the beast's snout pulled up, taking with it a large chunk of Gregory's neck, causing a small crimson geyser to erupt from the man's throat. As the poor man kicked and flailed under the mass of white, the beast's head turned and locked its burning yellow eyes to Jeremiah's. The fear should have frozen him in place and made him easy prey. Somehow, Jeremiah kept his presence of mind, maintained his hold on the hunting knife, and ran for his life. He couldn't find his voice until he had reached the cooking area. About 30 feet in front of him, he could see the campfire and the dancing silhouettes of Stephen and Betsy locked in a kiss. "Run, guys, run!" Jeremiah cried just before the monster fell on him. As he hit the ground on his stomach, the hunting knife fell free, bouncing through the dirt and grass until it disappeared. Then he felt the paw in his back as the monster pinned him. Stephen was yelling something incomprehensible just as twin rows of teeth sank into the medial part of Jeremiah's right shoulder. The pain was hot and blunt, and Jeremiah screamed. Face down in the dark, Jeremiah could not see a thing, but he could hear Stephen and Betsy trying to mount a rescue. "I can't find the knife," Stephen yelled. "Use the firewood," Betsy cried. Just as he started to feel as though his shoulder were about to be pulled out, Jeremiah felt an odd vibration as Stephen did as Betsy instructed and hit the beast in the head with a large block of firewood. In response, the creature opened its snout and roared. With his shoulder freed, Jeremiah was about to bring his head up, just enough to see his best friend with a look on his face that, under better circumstances, would have been amusing. Two thoughts entered Jeremiah's mind. Stephen is terrified, and we're all dead. The beast stepped over Jeremiah and charged at Stephen, who dropped the firewood and crossed his arms in front of his face. Just as the creature reached him, something cut through the air, causing the beast to flinch. Betsy had found the hunting knife. Her first thoughts had been to give the knife back to one of the men, then run off to get help. When she saw the man she loved bracing himself to be slaughtered, she ran up next to Stephen and joined the fray. Her first swing was a lucky shot that ripped the creature's nose wide open. The beast let off a howling scream that seemed to shake the world. "Betsy, get the fuck out of here," screamed Jeremiah. It was too late. Before Jeremiah could get on his feet, the beast locked his snout across Betsy's face and with one shake of the animal's large head, snapped her neck. Stephen, in a futile attempt to save Betsy, picked up the hunting knife and stabbed the beast in the face. The beast screamed again, releasing Betsy's mangled head. As she fell limp to the ground, the beast turned away from Stephen and ran into the woods, knocking Jeremiah back to the ground as it exited. With tears in his eyes, Stephen ran to Betsy and collected her in his arms. "Oh God, oh God, no God, please," was all Stephen could manage as he cradled Betsy's lifeless frame. Jeremiah stood up and went to grab his friend. "Dude, we got to get out of here before that thing comes back." "Mom, Dad," Stephen suddenly yelled into the night. When neither of his parents answered him, Stephen made the run into the tent area only to have Jeremiah restrain him. "You don't want to do that," Jeremiah finally said as Stephen looked into Jeremiah's face and read the awful truth. "Oh God," he screamed, tears filling his eyes. The grief was so overwhelming that Stephen's knees buckled and Jeremiah had to catch him. Meanwhile, in the distance, the monster answered Stephen's cry with a Stephen's cry of horror with a howl. Stephen didn't seem to hear it, but Jeremiah did. Despite Jeremiah's superior strength and the impending danger, it was a struggle to get his traumatized best friend into the Range Rover. The only way he could get Stephen to comply was to let him take Betsy. So while Stephen held Betsy and cried in the back seat, Jeremiah thanked God the Range Rover's keys were still in the ignition. The last thing he wanted to go through was a case of horror movie victim syndrome and end up searching for car keys with a monster about to pounce on them. As he hit the gas, Jeremiah saw the creature reemerge from the darkness in the rearview mirror. Even with the car in motion, he could tell that the beast's wounds had started to close. Rapid healing, howling. "Oh shit, I'm fucked," he said to himself as he got the Range Rover up to 60 and higher. Jeremiah didn't know the area very well, but he managed to find a park ranger station near the New Hampshire border. The story they told launched an emergency evacuation of Townsend National Park and a widespread search that lasted for several days. A doctor patched up Jeremiah's shoulder and gave Stephen the number of a good grief counselor, while a forensics team collected evidence that would clear them of any wrongdoing. Stephen was in no shape to do much that first week after the attack, so while Betsy's parents took care of her arrangements, Jeremiah handled the particulars involved with the double closed casket funeral for Gregory and Natasha Bouja. At no point did either of them say the words werewolf or giant wolf to any of the law enforcement officials or to anyone else. The two friends agreed upon this while they drove from the campsite, and it was a wise decision for reasons both evident and unknown. Not only would law enforcement have detained them much longer than they did, but vampire constables would have eventually gotten wind of the story and killed them. Of course, they didn't know about the vampires, just like the two friends would never have thought that what attacked them wasn't exactly a werewolf, at least not like the one Jeremiah would become.
Thank you, Stephen Van Patten.
Thank you, Marc Abbott.
Ooh. You gotta, hey man, you gotta let out a sigh of relief. That was great. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved into this world that we call horror.
Oh my God. Basically, I was what you would consider your classic only child latchkey kid. Television was part of my, childhood upbringing. Substitute babysitter some days. And in that, mom worked nights, so I would sneak around and watch a lot of things that I had no business watching. So that was where I guess the fandom side of things came from. And then, you know, as I got older and I started becoming more aware of the fact that people of color don't have the luxury of the same character development and all kinds of stuff like that, that's when I decided I would start writing my stuff to compensate for the caricature versus character thing that goes on with people of color in all sorts of movies.
What was the inspiration behind the Brookwater's Curse?
Brookwater's Curse in general. Well, part of that was definitely Blackula, and I know Blackula doesn't hold up, you know, in terms of like visual effects, you know, to the eyes of the or modern day moviegoer. But William Marshall's very performance, it had such gravitas to it, because I mean, of course, he's a Shakespearean trained actor and the whole thing, and you know, that and a few of the lines and a few of the things that the movies address, that always left me with the thought that, yes, you know what, on top of being scary, you can also address social issues within this genre. And that's kind of what I do about half the time.
All right. Let us tell us where we can find you and what new is on the horizon.
What new is on the horizon? I'll do that first. I am in the midst of completing the third installment of my serial killer series, Killer Genius. She kills because she cares, and Killer Genius, Attack of the Gym Rats. That's basically about a socially conscious, super intelligent Black woman who becomes a serial killer. And so I'm working on the third installment of that. I'm working on the fourth installment of the Brookwater's Curse series, of which you just heard a little snippet from. And I'm just random short stories. I'm just getting those together as people ask for them. I just sold a couple to the anthology series, Tales of the Canyons of the Damned. One of those is actually a cosmic horror, throwing back to Kirk for a second. You know, so I all kinds of irons in the fire at the moment, along with some comedy stuff and other things. And, you know, I'm just, you know, whatever hits me, that's what I'm working on. I can be found on Facebook. It's just the government name, Stephen Van Patten. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at SVP Thinks. And of course, my website where you can order stuff, you know, books like the ones I just talked about. And you can actually watch episodes mostly dealing with Black history that I wrote for a YouTube channel, Extra Credit, which I cover, you know, histories of Marcus Garvey, Medgar Evers, Billie Holiday, folks like that. All of that can be found at www.laughingblackvampire.com.
Thank you again, Stephen Van Patten. Give him another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. We will get to our next reader, which happens to be me. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will be reading from the first Hell series, Hell at the Way Station. There's a story in here called An American Ghost Story. My encounter took place on a stretch of Route 301 outside of Bowling Green, Virginia. From Bowling Green to Dawn County, the highway splits through two large sections of woods. And at night, it's pitch black because there are no roadside lights. And it remains that way until a car's headlights break the darkness. My aunts and uncles warned me about driving at night since, being a city boy, I didn't drive on the country roads much. And I was told to keep to the speed limit and never drive when I was tired. The night of the incident, I was returning from a party from one of my cousins. I had lost track of time and was over an hour late heading back to my grandma's. I called ahead, lying to my mom that my car had been giving me trouble, but I was on my way. Don't stop for anything. Come straight to the house, she advised. I won't. I'll be there by 12:30. For that, I needed to speed. And given the time of night, there were no cars on the road, and the troopers never hid in the cut to catch anyone. I had the road to myself. I turned on the radio, cracked the window, and I settled in. The smoothness of the blacktop reminded me of a racetrack, and I pushed the pedal to 70 in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. The engine revved as the vehicle picked up speed, and I saw the dial on the speedometer climb, and I felt a rush of excitement. I was tempted to go all the way to my grandmother's house at this speed. Then something darted into the road. Fearing it was a deer, I slammed on the brakes. The tires skidded and screeched, scaring the thing toward the woods. I heard a thump. The car jerked, and there was rattling from underneath. I stopped in the middle of the highway, heart pounding. After a moment, I pulled over to the shoulder. The rattling became a scraping sound. I took a flashlight from my glove compartment, got out, walked around to the front of the car to check the damage. I passed the beam across the bumper. It looked fine, and I buttoned my denim jacket, then knelt to see what was under the car. While passing the light along the undercarriage, I heard rustling in the woods behind me. I turned to look. The rustling stopped. I didn't bother raising the flashlight. I heard branches snapping, but saw nothing. I turned back to the car. Then I heard the distinct sound of heavy footsteps in the brush. The footsteps quickened, stopping shy of the edge of the woods. I got to my feet, passed the light over the tree line, hoping to spot whatever it was in the woods. I loudly cleared my throat, stamped my foot. Nothing. Okay, you're scaring yourself, I said aloud. There's nothing out there. I waited another moment. If it was an animal, I didn't want it charging me in fear. Help. Please help, called a voice from the woods. Hello? Someone there? Help me. The voice grew louder. Another twig snapped. I had a decision to make. Walk over to see if someone was hurt, or go back to my car and wait for someone to drive by and get assistance. How bad are you hurt? Can you tell me who you are? There was no response. A voice inside me said it was time to go, and I kept the light focused on the trees while backing away slowly to the car. I tried opening the passenger door. It was locked. I started walking to the rear of the car. Footsteps emerged from the woods behind me, crushing gravel onto the shoulder of the road. And I ran, and the footsteps quickened. And I reached the driver's side of the car, pulled the door open, and dove in. I tried turning the key in the ignition, but couldn't stop shaking. I closed my eyes, counted to 5 to calm down. Then I looked out the front window. A woman lay on the ground in front of the car. Her hair was filled with leaves and twigs, her shirt torn and tattered. She started pulling herself toward the car, but just her upper torso. At her waist, edges of her shirt were torn and soaked in blood. Help me. She reached for the grill of the car. Something hit the passenger side window. I turned. A large bearded man pressed his hands against the glass. His eyes had a crazed look. His right hand held a blood-drenched axe. Open the door. Come on, open the door. He pulled on the handle. Come on, let me in. I screamed so hard my throat stung. I turned the key, threw the car into drive, and sped off the shoulder of the highway. I barely missed hitting the woman. In the rearview mirror, I saw the silhouette of the man in the middle of the road, moonlight accenting his large figure as he shook the axe in the air. The rattling under the car intensified, but I didn't stop. My palms grew sweaty, slipping off the steering wheel, and the car skidded onto the shoulder. Its wheels spit gravel into the air. I tried to regain control, but turned the wheel too hard, and the back end began to turn. I slammed on the brakes, and the car went into a 360-degree spin. I screamed, letting go of the wheel. The car bounced, jerked, then collapsed to one side as it came to an abrupt stop in a ditch. My heart beat so hard, I could feel it in my ears. Exhausted, I rested my forehead on the steering wheel and closed my eyes. When I regained my composure, I opened the door and got out. The car sat sideways in the ditch. I couldn't get out without a hitch from a tow truck. I had to walk, but I didn't know which direction. I took my cell phone out, but I couldn't get a signal, so I grabbed my flashlight and started walking along the side of the road. I came to a large sign listing the miles to Richmond, Emporia, and finally Dawn. Relieved I was headed in the right direction, I kept the light aimed on the ground. The gravel surface was annoying to walk on. I moved closer to the road to walk along the edge. The flat surface was much more forgiving, and I periodically looked back down the road to see if any vehicles were coming. I couldn't believe there wasn't one car on this highway. A small dirt road led into the woods, and as I walked past, I turned the flashlight down. Running toward me was the deranged man with the axe. "Where you going? The lady asked for help," he shouted. I stumbled, dropping the flashlight. It broke. I ran and could hear him gaining ground behind me. Something sharp grazed my neck, followed by a burning sensation. He had tried to decapitate me, and my legs grew heavy. My chest started hurting, and I wanted to stop running, but my will to live wouldn't let me. And my pursuer let out a horrible, high-pitched laugh as he swung the axe again, and I heard it cut the air. I was certain I'd never see my family again. Then a white light broke the darkness on the horizon. A car! I waved my arms, screaming for them to stop. Red and blue lights flashed on the roof of the vehicle, and I yelled for joy. It was the sheriff. The footsteps behind me tapered off, and by the time the sheriff reached me, the man with the axe was gone. I could barely explain what happened. I was so shaken. He didn't pressure me to talk, simply put me in the back seat and drove me to my grandma's. You have to get the book to find out what happens after that. A little bit about me. I am a Brooklyn-based author, born and raised. I have loved horror ever since my father introduced me to the Twilight Zone and the Universal horror monsters when I was a child. And much to his chagrin, it stuck. And I have been in love with this genre ever since. I have authored 2 collections so far, Hell at the Way Station with Stephen Van Patten, and then there's Hell at Brooklyn T, which also features Stephen Van Patten and Kirk Johnson. I am currently working on trying to get my first independent manuscript out there. I have written young adult and a children's book as well. But my wheelhouse has been horror, and I believe it will always be horror. That is my thing. And you can find me at whoismarcabbott.com. That's my website. Who is Marc Abbott on Facebook and Twitter, and Who is MLA on Instagram. We are at the end of this session. Thank you to my storytellers, Kirk Johnson, Latoya Hankins, and Stephen Van Patten. Please support their work. Go out, get it on Kindle, get it on your Nook, get it in person, get the hard copy. Nothing's better than a hard copy book. My work is out there as well. We are all often appearing at conventions or speaking engagements. So follow us to find out where we're going to be next. And please do support. Thank you for everyone for coming out. Thank you to Brother Butler for helping me put this all together, and the Delta chapter for all of your hard work in putting this together and working with us to make this a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you all for coming, and have a great, great night.